Hey guys, what is going on? I hope you all are doing well today. Elliot here. Welcome back to The Fragrance Well. So we're going to focus on a specific style of fragrances today, and that is going to be boozy fragrances. I've had some people over the last few months probably ask me to do like a boozy fragrances list. I have done one before, but why not do an updated one? And honestly, I would say from then even to now, my understanding of boozy fragrances has gotten a lot better, and also I've added quite a few fragrances to the collection that have boozy qualities to them. And interestingly enough, boozy fragrances was one of those styles of fragrances that was really hard for me to understand and recognize. It took a lot more time, and I used to think like, well, it should smell like, I'm smelling the alcohol right there in the glass, right? Turns out that, and it took a while for me to understand this, it's not so much about that, it's more so about the notes you might experience within a particular type of alcohol, because if a fragrance just kind of smells like alcohol, it actually is not going to smell that good. And that's just my own opinion. I just kind of came to that realization on my own. It wouldn't really smell good if it's like smelling it in the glass. So it's more about the notes you might find in a particular alcohol, or an overall drink concoction, if you will, or maybe even a vibe or a setting where alcohol may be regularly served. So let's go ahead and get into it. We got 10 fragrances for this list today. They are not ranked in no particular order, and most of these are going to be autumn centered since the autumn season is coming up, but I do have 2 on here that would be considered warm weather scents. So let's go ahead and get right into it. But before we do, as always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please hit that bell icon and enable notifications so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. All right, to kick it off, we got one from Lorenzo Pizzalia. That's gonna be Sun-Gria. Lorenzo Pizzalia Sun-Gria. Shout out to this house. It is gaining a lot of steam. Frankly, this fragrance here played a large role in that. The fragrance is showing up on discounters now, or should I say the house is showing up on discounters now. But yeah, I do think Sun-Gria played a large role in that very popular summertime release from this year. And since the name implies, this one is boozy. Now this one definitely is more of a summer style fragrance, but you know what? I think you could wear it in the autumn temperatures, but I would say the vibe of the scent is more centered towards summertime, but that's neither here nor there. This does remind me of a Sun-Gria, so that is the boozy attitude of this fragrance. You do have wine-like elements to it. You've got like the citrus elements. This one's gonna be more of like the tropical, fruity style Sun-Gria. This fragrance is a lot sweeter overall. It is my understanding that there are some other fragrances out there that do use the Sun-Gria as the inspiration for the scent, and many of those might be even a little bit more realistic or a little more grounded than this one is. This one is a fun and playful version of a Sun-Gria, but that's kind of the point. And also, given a lot of the fragrances from the house, that's kind of the vibe of many of the fragrances. Not necessarily all of them, but food-like notes, or so gourmand notes, and also many boozy elements are featured in many fragrances from the house of Lorenzo Pizzalia, and this one is sitting high and mighty with the rest of the ones that are kind of previously released that many people may have not heard of. But I think this fragrance helped to put this house on the map, so to speak, in certain sectors of FragCom. So once again, from Lorenzo Pizzalia, this is Sun-Gria. All right, next one is coming from Kajal, and that's gonna be Lamar. Kajal, Lamar. I forgot to mention before that, a fragrance can have like a boozy attitude to it without necessarily listing a boozy note. But again, the notes are just kind of meant to give you somewhat of a representation of what they kind of expect you to experience, but they're not really indicative of what is in the fragrance. But anyway, this is a very popular fragrance from the house. As far as I know, it is still the most popular one. This one has pineapple, red fruits, has an effervescence to it. It's fresh, but it's also sweet, but not too sweet. It has a lightness to it, but also just an alluring, sexy nature to it. And for me, this fragrance reminds me of like a rosé wine, or a rosé champagne or something like that, with fruits. The fruits that, the fruity notes that you get from this fragrance. So like the pineapple and the red fruits. That is the overall vibe I get from this scent. Does it necessarily smell boozy? Not necessarily, but it does give me that vibe, and that's the picture I get in my head. So I consider this to be a boozy fragrance in terms of the vibe that it gives off. Once again, from the house of Kajal, this is Lamar. Alright, so every fragrance in general from now on is gonna pretty much be considered cool weather fragrances in my opinion, but again, as I always say, wear them when you want. So the next one from Savoir Faire is gonna be the Whiskey Rose. Savoir Faire, the Whiskey Rose. I've talked about this fragrance quite a lot. I think the name is very appropriate. It does smell like a drunken rose. It smells like rose petals steeped in some whiskey. That's pretty much what it smells like. It does have some leathery facets to it. There's some oud-like characteristics to it, you know, other than the booziness that this fragrance has, but it's definitely a boozy scent. Definitely puts me in the mindset of being in, say, like a nice fine dining situation where you can easily get top shelf drinks or cocktails, and this one here paints a picture of a top shelf cocktail in my mind. This is steakhouse approved, fine dining seafood, fine dining Italian, whatever you want to call it, French dining. This one here is like the epitome of a good fragrance for that setting. Certainly you can wear it in other settings as well, but that's like the first thing that kind of popped into my mind as soon as I smelled it, and that was also my first use for it. So that's why I use that analogy in terms of usage for this fragrance, but boozy for sure. Once again, from Savoir Faire, this is the Whiskey Rose. Next up, got one from By Kilian. That's gonna be Old Fashioned. By Kilian, Old Fashioned. You know, the latest greatest buzz fragrance that's out right now, I would say. Is this officially released now? I think it is at this point. If not, it's about to be. But yeah, you know, this fragrance here getting a lot of buzz from the house of By Kilian, and I think it's warranted. I think this fragrance is great. What is it? It reminds me of an old fashioned. Old fashioned, usually whiskey or bourbon, some simple syrups, some form of bitters, maybe a citrus element to it. Usually they throw like, you know, I forget what the name of those like super sweet syrupy cherries are, the dark ones, but that one might get thrown in there. It can have other elements to it in terms of it being smoked. It can be more tropical. It can be more fall centered and have a lot more spice. But this one here, I think it's just kind of centered around that basic old fashioned. In my opinion, if you are a fan of old fashions, this fragrance is at least worth getting your nose on, because to me, I do think it will put you in the mindset of an old fashioned, and that's what I really like about this scent. And I do think this is going to be a popular one for the upcoming autumn season. We'll see how it plays out. Once again, from By Kilian, this is Old Fashioned. All right, next one is coming from Day 3 Fragrances, and this is gonna be Ambar Dominicano. Day 3 Fragrances, Ambar Dominicano. Now this one here is your classic fragrance with spices and ambery notes, really, you know, autumn time centered. But the boozy nature of this is, there is a little bit of an effervescence in here, so you can almost get like a cola-like vibe. But the main thing I think that stands out in this in terms of the boozy elements is going to be an accord of Mama Juana. Mama Juana is a drink native culturally to the Dominican Republic, where they take spices and woods and honey and steep it in red wine. You can actually customize it to however you want, but I did have some when I last visited Dominican Republic, or should I say first visited Dominican Republic, and actually it was this fragrance that really made me want to try it. It is great stuff. Turns out you can make your own. I just need to do it, but I would say it is well represented in this fragrance. Now, if you never had anything like that, you probably really wouldn't pick up on it in this fragrance. I did not until I actually got my nose on and tasted the Mama Juana. But if you've ever had it, it's very well represented in this fragrance. Now, there's a lot of other stuff, great stuff, that is like perfect for the autumn season going on in this fragrance. But this one absolutely has a booziness to it, and you can pick up on that immediately, even if you're not familiar with that Mama Juana. So once again, from Day 3 Fragrances, this is Ambar Dominicano. All right, next one is coming from Le Labo, and this is gonna be Tabac 28. Le Labo, Tabac 28. Now, yes, the shining light of this fragrance is the tobacco, but it is tobacco leaves soaked in rum, and I mean deeply soaked in rum. You get the booziness from this right off the bat. I would say as it dries down, it's more about the tobacco, and there's also a little bit of some smoky notes in here. I think there might be a smoky oud. I think there's some gaiac wood, but you definitely get that rum-likeness in this fragrance right away. It is very nice and definitely puts me in the mindset of being in a cigar lounge, or maybe even taking me to a cigar lounge in an area where rum is a little bit more present, so think the Caribbean, something like that. Booziness undeniable in this fragrance. This is a city exclusive. It's going to be one of the more expensive ones from the house of Le Labo. Not as easy to get outside of that exclusive month, which I think is coming up here. We're in September. I think October is the month where this is available at other Le Labo boutiques. So I would say, you know, get your nose on it if you happen to live near one. But I love this stuff. This is great stuff and a great rum accord in this fragrance. Once again, from Le Labo, this is Tabac 28. All right, moving on. Next one's coming from Frapon, and this is going to be 1270. Frapon 1270. Now, if you're familiar with the house of Frapon, you know Frapon in general is actually a company that makes booze. So all of their fragrances, or at least the majority of them, are centered around boozy styled fragrances. This one here, it actually is more so about like dried fruits and some nuttiness and like honey style sweetness. This one's more of a vibe of booziness. You get somewhat of a boozy smell from this, but you know, maybe think like a scotch or something like a bourbon or even a whiskey. But I think this one's more about the vibe of where you might get boozy drink, or should I say get booze from. Think like a speakeasy. This one definitely has the vibe of a speakeasy or a really nice cocktail lounge. That's more so what this fragrance is about, because they have fragrances in this from this house that definitely have better representations of boozy notes than this one, but you do get a boozy vibe from this fragrance. So once again, from Frapon, this is 1270. All right, next one is coming from Naomi Goodsir, and this is Cuir Velours. Naomi Goodsir, Cuir Velours. Uh-oh, I can't get my focus right. All right, here we go. Anyway, this is my latest pickup. So far, I literally just got this past weekend. Such good stuff. I was out of town and I visited like probably what is considered by some the best place to shop for fragrances in that area, or at least one of the best, and they had this, and I said, yeah, let me go ahead and get that. I love how this smells. Now, this is mostly a leather fragrance, but it's a boozy leather fragrance. It's boozy, it's ambery, it's a little bit resinous, maybe a touch of spice, but yeah, the booze and the leather is undeniable in this scent. It's more of a rum like booze, maybe you could say somewhat of a bourbon, and a really rich leather in this. I love how this stuff smells, but undeniable boozy fragrance. Definitely one that I would say is intended, well, not intended, but shines the most in the autumn-like season. So I just had to kind of put this one on the list. Once again, from Naomi Goodsir, this is Cuir Velours. Next up, we got one from Tiziana Terenzi, and this is Ursa. Tiziana Terenzi, Ursa. Now, this fragrance is super complex if you're familiar with it. More of a leather, resinous, incensey fragrance, exotic woods like oud, and a rich leather, but it has a booziness to it as well. And it's kind of like a rum-like booziness where there's also dried fruits in this, and I think that dried fruits really plays well with the rum-like notes that are in this. And I would say the rum is somewhat neutral, but maybe a little bit more on the fruity side, because you know rum can be a lot of different things, kind of similar to whiskey. Depending on what's in it, it's gonna have a different flavor profile. But yeah, I love this stuff. Super complex, but I do love the boozy nature of it. And I would say it is a kind of booziness that you kind of have to, know what boozy fragrances are like. Remember I said in the beginning of the video, I didn't really know what to recognize as a scent profile that is equivalent to a boozy fragrance. This would be one of those ones where it would be really hard for me to understand that until I got my nose on more boozy fragrances. But anyway, really great stuff here. Not for everyone. Definitely sample this one first. Once again, from Tiziana Terenzi, this is Ursa. All right, and last but not least, coming from Tom Ford, we've got Tobacco Oud. Tom Ford Tobacco Oud. Now, this one is also more so about the tobacco, more so about the woods. There's a spiciness to it. There might be a little bit of patchouli in this as well. I think there is patchouli in this because it's like a patchouli sandalwood kind of base note dry down to this. But right off the bat, you do get this kind of whiskey-like accord. And many say that this fragrance is rough when you first spray it on, which I would agree with. And they sometimes attribute that being to the oud. I would say there's a little bit of that here. I actually think it's the whiskey accord that is in here that makes it a little bit rough around the edges, because it just kind of adds this, it's kind of tough to say. I wanted to say sourness, but I don't think it's a sourness. It's just just gives it a lot more edge. It gets a lot smoother as it dries down, but that whiskey note for me is undeniable as soon as you spray this on. And if you have gotten your nose on this and you like it, then you're like me. I'm like, I think it's awesome, but it's not for everyone. That opening to this fragrance can definitely throw some people off. And I would say from a boozy fragrance standpoint, might not be everyone's favorite, but for me, stuff absolutely works. Once again from Tom Ford, this is Tobacco Oud. Alright guys, that is gonna do it for this list. Let me know down in the comments below what some of your favorite boozy fragrances are. If you are a fan of boozy fragrances, there are plenty out there that I don't have in my collection that I'm pretty sure I would add to the list if I had them. I know there's some great ones out there. There's no shortage of great boozy fragrances. But yeah, just put them down below and keep that conversation going on great boozy fragrances. Would really look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. So, thanks again for watching all the way into the end. I really do appreciate you guys. Please remember to be well and smell well, and I will see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.